and challenge some of the core assumptions we often take for granted in this beautiful industry that we have, what really drives players' behaviors, and where the real opportunity sits. So to unpack this through a data-driven lens, we're going to be joined by Alex Tomic on the stage, where he will be sharing some insights of behavioral data and scale and what it reveals about how the world plays. So give it up, a big, warm Valletta welcome to Alex!
Ooh la la. Hi, everyone. It's nice to see you here. We are going to talk about data. So this presentation should have been about something different, about the data we have on the Alea platform. So I bragged a lot about data, I think, for the past 2 years. I've been telling you that we have a lot of data. We're an aggregator. I think we have around 50 million players that we track on the platform. And while we were doing this presentation, we didn't really know what to show you because there's so much data. So we decided to focus on the Sweepstakes because that is the geo/vertical that we found the most interesting. Right. So first of all, what we did, we analyzed data, a cohort of players of a period of 2 years. So we're talking about 1.5 million players on Sweepstakes. I told you more or less we have around 50 million players over the same period. 37.5 million sessions, which is an average of 25 sessions per player. 1.8 billion bets. Bet count is the number of bets, let's say spins. And the bet volume is 2.3 billion euros that are wagered in euros, across all active months. Again, we are on 2 years. Then we took the data of April 2026. For those of you who like numbers and are running operations, or have software providers, studios, so you can refer to only 1 month. We're talking about roughly 500,000 players, 4.5 million sessions, 235 million bet counts, and a bet amount of around 300 million euros. So why did we choose to present you data about Sweepstakes and not everything else we're doing? It's because as an aggregator, we don't see the entire flow of our customers. So we have around 200 customers. Some of them have 10 casinos. I don't even know how many casinos we have our games on. But on these hundreds of casinos, we sometimes have just one game provider, 2 or 3 game providers, and sometimes we have the entire floor. So you understand that when we have just a couple of game providers on the casino, we have an incomplete picture of what's happening there. We don't know the length of the player session, all the amounts that have wagered on that casino because we don't see the full picture. However, on the Sweepstakes vertical, we have approximately 80% of the floor on those customers. So we have a quite acute picture of what's happening, and that's why we're presenting you this data today. So what do we see? Over a period of 7 quarters, from Q3 2004 to Q1 2026, we started with 1 million GGR monthly, and we reached 30.7 million GGR in Q1 2026, okay? Approx 13 million GGR per month on the last quarter, more precise on the last month. It's a growth of 11.5 times. So it's the biggest growth we've seen with Brazil. The number is not here. When I tell you 13, 15 million GGR per month, that's what a country like Brazil represents. So if you can see the size of the sweepstakes vertical compared to the size of the Brazilian market, they're approximately the same, and the growth was as strong, as fast on sweepstakes as it was in the Brazilian market. And you can see that this growth is not steady. You can see 1 million, 2.6 million, 2.4, 4.7. It's not taking off. And then something's happened in Q3 2005. We move at 17.4 million and we reach 30.7 million. Again, if we look month per month over the last 12 months, we see the same growth from 1.4 million to 13.4 million. That's what I said to you before, in GGR per month. So in less than 2 years, sweepstakes is around 11% of the business that is generated on our platform. Now that's where it gets interesting, is who is getting the share of the lion. What we're going to see now is very important if you run a game studio. As an aggregator, we see a lot of game studios. They come, they knock on our door. They want to be integrated. They want to have access to customers. They want to have access to markets. Sometimes I feel for them. It's a very complicated position to be in. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of content fatigue. New providers, operators are not even looking at them. So here is the biggest takeaway of what we've seen in the sweepstakes market. So we're going from May 25 to April 26, and what we see, if you look at the yellow color, the #1 provider is Pragmatic. So don't look at the way these bars are stacked, just look at how much they represent. So you see that the biggest chunk from 50-something% to 80% is Pragmatic. It means that they have 30% of the market in May 2025. We have 3 orgs, that's a little bit under, the red one, and we have Hacksaw Gaming, that's between around 20%. Pragmatic grows in June, maintains its position in July, maintains its position in August. It doesn't really matter that it moves up and down. It's more because Hacksaw Gaming, and especially 3 orgs, is going down. What do we see? We see 3 orgs losing its momentum, and Pragmatic as being the leader, taking more space. And that's exactly what would have happened if in September 2025, Pragmatic didn't leave the market. And then what do we see? We see the challengers, 3 orgs and Hacksaw, fighting for this first position. So instantly after that, in September 2025, we see 3 orgs doubling its revenue, continuing its growth, and becoming #1, #2, depending on the months, fighting with Hacksaw Gaming. We see also something very interesting. We see a 3rd player coming in. On the last 2 months, on the top, you have Booming Games, which represents, at the end, around 20% of the market in just 2 months. We're going to talk a little bit more about Booming Games. It's a very interesting software that is taking a leading position. So you could say it's not that big, but actually in just 2 months, it has 10% of the sweepstakes market, at least on our platform. And that's not what we see in real money gaming. So we have here a provider that doesn't have this same exposure the same market share on real money gaming. I don't show you the number here, but I have them. They don't have 10% of the market in real money gaming. And they've been in real money gaming for, I don't know, 7 or 8 years. So you see what's happening, and especially in April 2026, Three Oaks is still taking the share of the lion. Hacksaw Gaming too. Oh, Evolution. That's another one I almost forgot to talk about. So we see that Evolution was a little bit bigger July, then it became big in August. And then September, and it's maintaining a lower position at still number 3 on the following months. What does that mean? We're going to see after the player pattern between slots and live in Sweepstakes, but Evolution has entered the market in June 2025. You see that little blue line there? We believe that we are, at Alea, a part of the reason why Evolution joined. We really push them. Please, come on the market. Players are asking for you. Our customers are asking for you. And I imagine other aggregators and other operators were asking Evolution to enter the market, and they did enter the market. However, Pragmatic left, Pragmatic Slots and Pragmatic Live, which means that there is another place to take in the sweepstake market for a live studio. Anyone from Imagine Live? Well, that's where you should be. All right. Okay, that's a very interesting one. We're not going to look now at studio per studio. We analyze the cohorts on the last 12 months. So a cohort of people, basically, we followed 1.3 million players over a period of 12 months to look at what games they were playing. And we didn't look especially at studio per studio. I mean, we have them, but we present you the information in another way. The red one are the new studios, launched the same months. After, orange, it's recent, 1 to 2 months. Maturing, 3 to 5 months. Legacy, that have been here for more than 6 months, that players have been playing for more than 6 months. What do we see? In May 2025, we only have legacy studios. Okay? The 1 million GGR we're making basically are coming from Pragmatic and Three Oaks. This is the same in June 2025. July, we have the recent ones, the one that the players are playing for 1 or 2 months that are kicking in. They take a more preeminent share of the market in August. And now, if we move forward to April 2026, 50% of the GGR, around 7 million, is taken by the legacy games, and 50% is a mix of the new ones, around 15–20%, the maturing ones, and the big share of the recent one, 1 to 2 months. What does that mean? That means that if you're a new game provider, you can have access to the sweepstake markets. Players are always looking for new content. They're not looking for legacy content. For a reason we don't really understand yet, probably the demographic is very different. They do look at the beginning to legacy content. They are attracted to the big brands, but then they go play on new content. And they always go play on this new content, which is a very big opportunity for smaller studios. So we can see that Three Oaks quickly took the #1 spot from Pragmatic. And we've seen it internally, especially with the promotion. They were extremely aggressive with promotion. And that's how they took that spot. When they saw the opportunity of Pragmatic leaving the market, we had them on our back on a daily basis. Our account manager, our partnership team were having three orcs calling literally every day and throwing promotion in order to get to get the space left empty by Pragmatic. So the Pragmatic play example shows us one thing, is when a big provider leaves the market, he leaves a space, he leaves an empty space, another one's going to come and take that space, and you want to be there. It doesn't mean that this other one has to be a big one. In Sweepstakes, it can be a smaller studio. And the booming game example, we have a brand new entrant that reached top 4 in second months. This is very unlikely to happen in any other vertical in iGaming. So what we were saying, opportunity for a game provider, we went from 19 to 58 studios in 12 months. That's 39 new entrants with the share of weekly revenue climbing. So here we took the data from a slightly different angle. We have the legacy game provider, and we have the new game provider that were launched in the last 12 months. You see more or less the same thing that we've seen in the slide before. It's that after a year of operation, the new game provider literally hates the share that the legacy game provider were having. So one thing that you may ask is that in May, the GGR is around 1 million, and in April, the GGR is around 13 and something million, because that's what's happening on our platform. So the data is biased, all right? Or at least it's the reference, it is in the context of what's happening on the Alea platform. But we should see the same growth from legacy than from new game provider, and that's not at all what we see. What we see is that the new game providers are taking over the legacy ones. And that's what we see with the 19 to 58 number. So 47% of April GGR came from games that are less than 6 months old. All right. Behavioral analysis of Sweepstakes players. 90% of the GGR come from slots. Usually, we don't have it written here. We all know that in real money gaming, it's more 70 to 80% coming from slots, 20 to 30% coming from live, okay? So here we have a more segregated picture, 90% from slots, 10% from live. The devil is in the details. Look at the little line under, the ARPU, average revenue per user, 29 euros, bet per round, 1.1 euro. So that means that each time a player clicks on the spin button on a slot, is spending 1 euro. And that is value over that period of time. So it's April 2026. That's 1 month's data. We wanted to focus on 1 month. So people here that have operations or studios, you can relate to this information, okay? This information might be slightly different from what you see. Again, we don't have 100% of the floor. We have 80% of the floor. So you can add 20% on top of that. 29 euro ARPU, monthly ARPU on this player on slots. And if we go on live, we have 50 euro ARPU, and the bet per round is 10 euros, which is 9 times more than on slots. Okay, so how is that possible? We have players that are betting 1 euro on slots, 10 euro on live. The ARPU is 30 euro on slots, 50 euro on live, yet live is just 10%. Why is not live bigger? Well, because they play more rounds on slots than they play on live. That's what we see. We didn't put all the numbers here because otherwise it would be unreadable. And also we have less players playing on live than playing on slots. So Sweepstakes is mainly a slot player vertical. The second thing, if we look at the number on the right, they don't look very interesting. We have 86% of the GGR from mobile, and we have 14% of the GGR on desktop. And that's what you would have overall on any operation, depending on the market. If you go in Africa, you have more mobile, maybe 90%. If you go in other countries, mobile will be 70, 75%. So here we have an average of what we would have in different operations. Again, the devil is in the details. The two little numbers under, ARPU 30 euro, bet per round 1.2 on mobile. ARPU, same, 30 euro, bet per round 1.2. What does that mean? Well, it's the same. They spend the same and the same way on both devices. Why is that strange? Anyone has an answer? Okay, so the operations people are not in a room. What do we see usually? We see people playing much more on mobile, but lower amounts. The business is done on desktop, and the high bets are done on desktop. So in Sweepstakes, mobile is the primary device of spending. We don't have people that come on mobile, play a little bit, do small bets, go away, come back on the desktop, and put the big bets on high volatility game, and that's where the GGR is made and the ARPU is made. No, it's exactly the same. So mobile is not just the primary device of use, it's also the primary device of spend. And you can see this ARPU on the right side, again, on 1 month. Evolution is number one with 48 euros. It's normal, it's live, they spend more on live. And, but there is less players, right? Remember that, because we just have 10% of the GGR in live. All right, so players spend more on live, but there's less players. And then we have No Limit City, which is an interesting one because it's a high volatility. Studio, Hacksaw, etc. All right, the key takeaway. Before we jump in the key takeaway, there's something we didn't show you here. That's really cool. What we have in our data, when we look at games, and we can look at games from very granular point of view because we have the full data on games. We don't have the full player journey, as I've told you before, because again, we don't have the full floor, but we do have the full data on a game. So for a game, we know its hit ratio, which means the game is paying out every 4 spins, which is a 25% hit ratio. And then what we have the RTP distribution, okay? So the RTP distribution would be, if the RTP, let's say, for the sake of it, is 95%, is it given to players through a lot of small wins, or is it given to players through a very few but big wins? So it looks like a chart where you have your hit ratio, and then you see that you have a lot of wins that are concentrated into 10 times the bet, 50 times the bet, 100 times the bet, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000, 100,000 times the bets. Okay, and this is a very high volatility slot. And which is a little bit what the No Limit City does. What we see is that players in Sweepstakes like low volatility slots. So they want to have a high hit ratio, 25%, and they want the bet to be distributed towards the center, not these wins of 100,000 times you bet. And that's what we believe that booming games is performing well. It's because they have low volatility games, and we're analyzing that more and more to be able also to recommend specific games for sweepstakes, because we see that sweepstakes players are completely different demographic. So, 6% of all players play live, that's what I said to you before, very small part of them, but they represent 10% of the GGR. They spend 9 times per bet round versus slots, and they have an overall higher ARPU, 50 euros to what, 30 euros. So there's a clear supply gap that needs to be filled. Basically, we need more live studios. We only have Evolution today doing sweepstakes, okay? Mobile ARPU is 10% higher than on desktop. And we have the data from Real Money Gaming, and it's the opposite. ARPU in desktop is 20% higher. So ARPU desktop 20% higher, in sweepstake, mobile 10% higher. And the ARPU level shows that content engagement matters. ARPU varies between providers. 3Orcs is number 1 in GGR, but ARPU is lower than Playsen or Axo. So, we have very little time left. Number 1, Bounce Back Kid. Sounds like written by AI. It's not. It's Merit. Even after the New York and California bans and the pragmatic play exits, April 2026, it's an all-time GGR high. Revenue moved and the market kept growing. I've seen it myself. I've said to the team, let's stop sweepstake. Let's get out of there. Providers that we're working with that have a license in the US are being pushed by operators like BetMGM to not provide sweepstakes. And BetMGM is saying to their provider, if you provide sweepstakes, we're not going to take on our real money gaming operation. So there's a real pressure. But market survived. It shifted. If you look at sweepstake operations, at the beginning, it was social. I talk about sweepstakes, but sweepstakes social are terms that you can interchange. Social, sweepstakes, it became social with a sweepstake element. And now if we go in any sweepstake casino, they all have their secret sauce. So it's a very shifting industry. North Drone is safe. A year ago, Pragmatic led the market, and today 3Orcs dominates with Axo. Tomorrow, a newcomer could take that space. I'm not going to talk about booming again, but as you are here, ladies, and another live studio. We've said it, opportunity for new studios. I'm not going to repeat your name. Device strategy matters, very important. Mobile is king on sweepstake even more than on real money gaming. So they not only spend time, but they spend money on mobile. Novelty over familiarity. Sweepstakes players, this guy is going to throw me out. Sweepstakes players love new content. 47% of GGR comes from games launched in the last 6 months. I repeat, 50% of the GGR comes from games that have been launched within the last 6 months in a real money gaming operation. 30% of the GGR comes from Pragmatic, and 30–40% from Pragmatic and Evolution. This is never seen before. This is a real opportunity for new studios. Okay, and don't forget something. You don't need a license. You have access to a new market/vertical without a license. The live casino gap, live constantly outperforms slots, but few studios actively invest. A gap in the market just waiting to be filled. Thank you very much.